The deer collapsed in the middle of the marketplace, and for a moment, no one knew what to do. 1 second, the noise of the morning carried on as usual. Vendors calling out prices, children running between stalls, the soft chatter of early customers. Then came the sound of hooves skidding, a soft thud, and silence. It lay there, legs tangled awkwardly beneath it, chest rising and falling in short, panicked bursts. Its sides quivered. Its eyes darted between the crowd that had begun to gather. People stood frozen. Some stepped back. Others reached for their phones. But no one moved closer. Until Mr. Hamid did. He was 70, known more for his slow steps and warm tea than any quick movement. But when he saw the deer trembling on the hot pavement, he didn't hesitate. He knelt beside it, lowering himself slowly, and reached for the animal's head with both hands. His voice was low, calm, like he was speaking to a scared child. "It's okay," he whispered. "We see you." The deer flinched, but didn't pull away. Someone from the fruit stall brought a bowl of water. Another person tore off a piece of cloth and soaked it, handing it to Mr. Hamid without a word. He dabbed gently at the deer's ears, cooling its head, careful not to startle it. The sun beat down harder, but he stayed there, shielding the animal with his shadow, eyes full of something between fear and determination. Layla, the young woman who ran the bakery 2 stalls down, stepped forward next. She knelt beside Mr. Hamid and offered slices of apple in her palm. The deer didn't eat. It couldn't. But its breathing began to slow, and its eyes, wide and terrified, started to blink more slowly. One by one, more people moved in. A boy dragged over a stand fan. Someone else brought a worn rug to lay under the deer. The marketplace, once filled with noise and routine, shifted. Kindness filled the gaps where panic might have grown. Still, no one could explain where the deer had come from. The forest was far, too far, for an injured animal to reach the town without help. It had likely wandered for hours, maybe longer, confused and alone. And now it had collapsed here, in the middle of carts and crates, fruit and dust. It didn't matter how it got there. What mattered was that it had come. What mattered was that it was no longer alone. Mr. Hamid looked up at the silent crowd, his voice cracking as he asked, "Can someone please call a vet?" No one hesitated. Calls were made. Shade was built. Water bowls were replaced again and again. And through it all, the deer lay still, breathing, waiting, alive. The call for a vet had been made, but the wait stretched longer than anyone expected. Roads were blocked after a landslide near the outskirts, and help wouldn't arrive for hours. The midday sun kept climbing, merciless and still. The deer's body continued to tremble, each breath shallow, its neck stretched flat against the rug they'd laid beneath it. Its strength was draining slowly, right there in front of everyone. No one left. Layla crouched beside the animal, gently placing small cubes of melon on a metal plate and sliding it near its mouth. The deer made no effort to eat. Its eyes blinked slowly, dazed and fading. A little boy from the spice shop, no older than 10, returned carrying a bag of ice and a rusted hand fan. His father helped him place the ice into a bowl near the deer's feet. He didn't say anything, just sat down beside it and began to fan. Farhan, a young delivery boy with dust on his shoulders and kindness in his voice, showed up next. He'd heard what happened through a phone call and rushed from 3 streets away. He knelt beside Layla, pulled a water bottle from his bag, and dipped a piece of cloth in it. "We need to cool the chest," he murmured, gently pressing the cloth over the deer's side. The animal flinched slightly, then stilled. Its ears twitched. A quiet formed between them. Not silence, but a steady hush where everyone moved with a shared purpose. Someone hung an old curtain from the awning to block the sun. A man from the electronics stall brought out a fan connected to a battery. A little girl passed around cups of cold water, her eyes never leaving the deer. It was Layla who gave it a name. She leaned in, brushing the sweat from her brow, and whispered, "Azan." Her voice cracked. A call to life. Let's call him that. No one disagreed. It fit. Still, the deer's head remained low. Its breath came weaker now. Mr. Hamid returned from his tea stall with a blanket he hadn't used in years, and laid it beside Azan, folding the corners to make a soft edge around his body. Then he sat, cross-legged, his hands resting in his lap. "We wait," he said softly. "And while we wait, we stay." People nodded. Others sat down too. A cluster of strangers, bound by nothing except the quiet desperation to keep something alive. No one spoke loudly. No one asked questions. The marketplace moved in slow rhythms around them, but the heart of it, right here, beat softly with care. And just before the hour ended, Azan tried to stand. He pushed once, legs shaking, collapsed again. A gasp ran through the group, but no one touched him. Layla leaned closer and whispered again, "It's okay. We're not going anywhere." Azan didn't try again, but he blinked twice, then rested his head against the cool towel, still breathing, still here. As the sun began to dip slightly, casting longer shadows across the marketplace, the group grew quieter. The air had thickened with fatigue, but no one left. It had been hours since Azan collapsed, and still he hadn't moved again. His breathing was shallow but steady, his legs twitching once in a while, like he was caught somewhere between exhaustion and instinct. The ice bowl had melted. The cloths had dried and been soaked again, but his body remained heavy against the rug. Farhan sat with his back against a crate, legs stretched out, eyes fixed on the deer. "We need to get him somewhere cooler," he said softly. "The sun's going to come around the corner soon. It'll hit him full." Layla looked over at Mr. Hamid, who sat with his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "There's the back room in my shop," she said, "but it's still too close. The air doesn't move much." Farhan turned slowly toward the alley behind the fruit stall. "My mother's sewing room," he said. "It's shaded all day, cool tiles. It's not much, but it might help." No one questioned it. They simply moved. The older boys from the butcher's cart brought over a large wooden board and placed it carefully beside Azan. The deer stirred, but didn't resist as they gently rolled the blanket under his body, lifting inch by inch. His legs hung loosely, but his chest rose again, slow and steady. It took all of them to carry him. They held their breath around every corner. The alley was narrow, the turns tight, but not one person lost focus. At the back of the alley, Farhan's mother met them at the door, already clearing a space with her hands trembling slightly. She didn't say a word, just nodded and stepped aside. Inside the room, the light was softer, the air cooler. They placed Azan gently on a bed of folded cloth, layered with a towel soaked in rosewater. The deer didn't move, but his eyes opened wider. His ears lifted faintly, then settled. They took turns keeping watch. A bowl of water was kept near his head. Cloths were changed every hour. No one told anyone to stay. They just did. That night, Mr. Hamid refused to go home. He sat in a chair near the door, blanket over his knees, one hand resting on the edge of the makeshift bed. He watched the rise and fall of Azan's chest, and when everyone else had dozed off in corners, he whispered softly into the silence, "You don't owe us anything, just rest, that's all we want." Outside, the market had gone quiet, but in that small room, kindness pressed in from every wall, holding the space together like a promise. Azan's eyes stayed open for a long time, watching. Then, finally, they closed. Not from weakness, from peace. Morning light poured softly into the sewing room, tracing gentle lines across the floor tiles. Azan still lay on his side, his breaths slow, but steadier than the night before. Mr. Hamid hadn't moved from his chair. His back ached and his eyes burned, but when Farhan's mother entered with a quiet knock and saw him still there, she only offered a soft smile and placed a cup of tea near his hand. Just before noon, the vet arrived. Dr. Samir stepped into the room with a calm, practiced gaze. He was younger than they expected, dressed plainly, but his eyes landed on Azan with immediate focus. No one said much, they just moved back to let him through. Mr. Hamid stood slowly, stiff from the night, and nodded once. He's been like this since early evening, breathing but weak. He hasn't eaten. Dr. Samir knelt down beside the deer and began his quiet exam. His fingers moved carefully across Azan's limbs, checking the tendons, pressing lightly near the ribs, watching for reactions. He looked into the eyes, opened the mouth, examined the hooves. Then he sat back on his heels and exhaled slowly. He's dehydrated, heat exhaustion, possibly an infection starting in the hind leg, but it's treatable. He looked around the room, his tone quiet but firm. Whatever you've done to keep him stable, this setup, this space, it kept him alive. The tension that had held the room in a chokehold began to loosen. Layla let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Farhan leaned against the wall, his shoulders sagging with relief. Dr. Samir took out a small injection kit and prepared a glucose shot, along with fluids. He explained each step, and though Azan flinched slightly as the needle pricked his skin, he didn't resist. His eyes opened wider again, clearer than before. A slow blink. A deep, fuller breath. "He's responding," the vet said. "He needs time, but this is a good sign." They didn't cheer. They didn't speak, but their eyes filled. Layla turned away, brushing at her face. Mr. Hamid sat back down, this time without the weight pressing so hard on his chest. Dr. Samir stayed for another hour, monitoring Azan's vitals, instructing them on how to keep the space quiet, cool, and calm. When he stood to leave, he paused at the door and looked at each of them. "Not many places would have done what you did," he said. "You didn't just keep him alive, you gave him a chance." After he left, the room stayed quiet for a long time. Then Azan shifted slightly and lifted his head for the first time, just enough to look around. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, but in that single moment, surrounded by people who had chosen to care, it felt like the most hopeful thing in the world. By the next morning, word had spread. People who hadn't seen the deer with their own eyes the day it collapsed now stopped by the sewing shop, quietly peeking in, offering small donations, or simply standing outside with folded hands. No one spoke loudly. It had become something sacred. The room where Azan rested felt different, like it had taken on a kind of reverence no one could fully explain. Inside, the care continued. Farhan arrived early, carrying boiled vegetables and a soft sponge to gently clean the deer's hooves. Layla brought baked bread for the volunteers and a small dish of crushed herbs that she said were calming. Even the children came in shifts, fanning Azan while whispering to him about school and cartoons and things he likely didn't understand but somehow still listened to. Azan was stronger. His eyes followed movement now. His ears twitched when someone entered. And late in the afternoon, without any warning, he stood. It was unsteady, his legs trembled and his body wavered. But he lifted himself. For a few seconds, no one moved. Layla froze mid-step. Farhan held his breath. Mr. Hamid, who had just returned with a cup of warm milk, nearly dropped it. Then, slowly, Azan took a step, just one. But that step was everything. A soft cheer rose, followed by quick hands reaching out, not to hold him down but to steady the moment to make it real. Azan didn't panic. He looked at them all and blinked slowly, then lowered himself back onto the bed of folded cloth. Farhan whispered, "He remembers us." Later that evening, they gathered outside the shop, sitting under the string lights that hung between buildings. They talked about things they hadn't shared in years. One vendor apologized to another for an old argument. Layla passed out extra pastries, and Mr. Hamid told stories from decades ago, making the children laugh until their stomachs hurt. In the quiet that followed, someone said, "It's like the deer brought something back we didn't know we lost." No one disagreed. Azan's recovery became part of the marketplace's daily rhythm. People asked for updates before placing their orders. Customers brought fruit for him along with their groceries. A group of teenagers started sketching him in their notebooks. One drew his silhouette with the words, "Still standing." And above it all, there was this feeling that no one could quite name. A closeness, a softness, something warmer than before. They hadn't set out to build anything. They had just tried to keep a broken creature alive. But in doing that, they'd become something more than a market, more than neighbors. They had become a quiet circle of people who knew what it meant to hold on to life, even when it was slipping away. And Azan, without saying a word, had reminded them how. Dr. Samir returned with the sanctuary team on a quiet Wednesday morning. The sewing room smelled of fresh flowers and faint cinnamon from the bakery next door. Azan was standing when they arrived. Not just standing, strong. His coat was cleaner now, his movements calmer, and though the limp in his back leg remained, it no longer defined him. He looked up when the door opened, and for a brief moment he just stared. Then he blinked once, slowly, and went back to chewing the greens Farhan had laid out. The sanctuary staff moved carefully. They spoke gently, as if entering a place of worship. They brought a soft harness and a crate built for transport, lined with straw and hay. No one said much. They knew what this meant. He was ready, that should have been enough. But it still hurt. Layla brought out the sketch one of the children had made and pinned it to the wall near Azan's spot. Mr. Hamid sat beside the deer for a few quiet minutes, resting his palm against the fur on Azan's neck. "You don't owe us anything," he said again, "but thank you for letting us be part of your fight." The team gave them one last hour. People gathered, not in a crowd, but in small circles, around the sewing shop and under the awnings. Some stood in silence. Others whispered. A few left flowers by the door. Children brought their letters folded in bright paper, placing them gently beside the old blanket Azan had first been carried in. Everyone gave something. A word, a look, a pause. Farhan crouched near Azan and tapped his fingers softly against the floor. "You'll have a forest now, and space. Real sky. I hope they give you a name, but we'll always know you as Azan." His voice cracked, but he didn't stop. "You're the reason my mother smiled again. You're the reason I believe people change." When it was time, Azan didn't resist. He stepped into the crate with only a moment's hesitation, as if he understood the journey ahead. The team closed the door, slow and quiet. The crate was lifted into the back of the transport van. The engine started. Still, no one moved. As the vehicle pulled away, dozens of eyes followed. The hum of the motor faded into the distance, until only the soft rustle of wind remained. No one spoke. Not yet. Then Mr. Hamid reached down, picked up the empty bowl Azan used to drink from, and held it gently. "He didn't leave us behind," he said. "He just carried us forward." The sewing room was empty now. But it didn't feel hollow. It felt sacred, like something had been mended there that had nothing to do with thread or cloth. And for the first time in years, the market felt whole. Weeks passed, but no one forgot. The sewing room stayed quiet, no longer a shelter, but never returned fully to what it was. Farhan's mother left the door open most days, with a fresh towel folded neatly inside and a small dish of water placed near the window. Children still came by after school, sometimes just to sit for a few minutes, as if Azan's spirit had left something behind that still lingered in the air. The mural Layla had painted on the bakery wall bloomed with color. Azan standing tall among flowers, the marketplace in the background, soft light rising behind him. It wasn't just art, it was memory. It was a reminder of who they had been when they chose to care. Tourists took photos with it, but locals looked at it differently, quietly, as if whispering something to themselves each time they passed. Mr. Hamid set up a small wooden box at the front of his tea stall with a sign that read, "For the ones who can't ask for help." Coins clinked inside it every day, sometimes notes. One read, "For the next Azan." Another simply said, "You reminded me to care." Farhan began volunteering at the sanctuary every weekend. He'd return home with stories of new arrivals, injured birds, rescued foxes, abandoned calves. But the moment his voice changed was always the same when he spoke about Azan. "He's with the herd now," he'd say softly. "He runs. Not far yet, but he runs." It wasn't just the deer they remembered. It was the way they became something else in his presence. Strangers turned into neighbors. Neighbors into something like family. There had been no grand speech, no donation drives or camera crews. Just cloth, water, hands, time, and love in its most ordinary form. The marketplace was still noisy, still full of deals and deliveries and shouts from one end to the other. But beneath it all, there was a different heartbeat now. A quieter strength. A shared knowing. Azan didn't stay, he wasn't meant to, but he left something behind that did. If this story touched your heart, carry it forward. Not everyone collapses in the middle of a market. Some fall silently, in places no one sees. Be the one who kneels down. Be the one who stays. Kindness doesn't need a reason. It just needs a beginning. Subscribe to our channel for more real, powerful stories that prove gentle hands can hold up the world. Every story shared is another reminder that hope still lives in quiet places. Share this moment. Keep the ripple going. Be someone's miracle, just like they were his.